Ready?
Ready.
Okay. Hello, everyone. Welcome to this webinar. So you're joining us today to really hear a bit of a wrap up from the Portworx perspective on what was an absolutely fantastic event that happened a couple of weeks ago that I'm sure everyone's aware of, KubeCon in Paris. And we're joined here by Vinny. Vinny, do you want to quickly introduce yourself?
Yeah, so I'm a cloud native architect. I'm working at Pure Storage in the cloud native business unit, so on Portworx. And I'm doing this today with my lovely and nice manager, you, Joe.
Oh, me. Oh, thanks, Vinny. Hi, everyone. I'm Joe. As Vinny said, I look after the cloud native architecture team at Portworx inside Pure Storage. And today we're going to run through first just a bit of our view on sort of the event itself. I think, Vinny, how many KubeCons have you been to now?
It was my third.
Your third. Yeah, so we've got some veterans. I think some of the other guys who were there was their fourth or fifth. For me, it was my sixth. Obviously, I'm just showing off. I had to get that in there. But we've got a great view of sort of how KubeCon's evolved, and we're going to talk a bit about that. Then we're going to talk about our takeaways from the event. And yeah, there were really three themes that came out of KubeCon. We're gonna go into that. And Vinny, I'm going to surprise you with some questions that I definitely didn't share with you in advance, just to kind of get your view on these three topics. So let's get straight into it. And I think, as I said, a great place to start is just to talk about the event itself. And for me, this was the most successful and most sort of, I guess, inspiring KubeCon that I've been to. The attendance was amazing. I think the final numbers were over sort of 11 or 12,000 people, which is just amazing. And for me, there was like a real kind of buzz at the event. I don't know, Vinny, what your thoughts were.
Yeah, agreed, totally. Obviously, you failed to mention the location, so it was in Paris. Nice place to have this event. I think it was the first time we had a KubeCon in France, so it was great. And yes, I'm sure everyone could feel the momentum, the great energy we had with this community, and it's still growing and growing each and every year.
Absolutely. And from our perspective, we had a great workshop that we ran on sort of KubeCon day 0. Anyone who's been to KubeCon before will know that the sort of unofficial first day where there were loads of different kind of mini conferences happening across the ecosystem of technologies and vendors in the Kubernetes space. We had our own. It was a data on Kubernetes workshop, which was really, really well attended, and the whole team did an excellent job of talking about three kind of key topics that we're also going to talk a bit about today. And then, of course, there was just the interest, not only on our booth, of course, you can see in the pictures, lots of people really interested to hear from some of our customers and partners. But across the conference hall, it felt like there wasn't that sort of lull in between talks where, it's kind of quiet on the booth and you haven't got such a huge amount of interest. It just felt like the hall was packed constantly with people really interested in engaging with different, whether it's vendors or projects or startups in this space. And for me, it took on, I don't know, more of a sort of, maybe mature is the wrong word, but it felt like the conversations were more about kind of really real world critical use cases, more than I'd experienced at previous KubeCons. There were questions about, how to manage scale, how to accelerate bringing workloads into Kubernetes. So it kind of feels like 10 years on, right? Because it is the 10-year kind of anniversary of Kubernetes. But it feels like we're now at that point where Kubernetes is now really sort of underpinning some pretty significant, important platforms in a whole range of organizations. Any thoughts on that, Vinny?
As I said previously, totally agree, Joe. We could feel that. And for me, my first one was in Valencia. And yeah, I was going to use the word mature as well. the conversation, we switched from was it possible to conversation about how to deploy my application. We'll talk about it later, but now conversation are about AI. Am I able to do some inference, some machine learning on containers? Am I able to optimize my operation? It's not just will Kubernetes work on my environment, where it's really, okay, we defined our architecture, we want Kubernetes, we want to use these applications, how could you help us? And yes, in the solution showcase location, we could see ton of people asking questions, drawing, designing architecture, and it was really great.
Yeah, absolutely. All right, brilliant. So let's move on and let's get into our first topic. So Vinny and I, you'll be glad to know, did have a little bit of a chat beforehand about the three themes. And whilst there was a heated argument, we managed to boil it down to just three that we think were the kind of key takeaways and themes from the event. And the first one really that stood out for us is platform engineering. And, you know, this has been a sort of topic that's been discussed for quite a while now. It did feel for a while like it was DevOps rebranded, right? You know, instead of having a DevOps team, you now have to have a platform team. But I think the thing that was different for me at this KubeCon was that this was now a broadly accepted and widely understood term, not only in defining someone's role in being responsible for that Kubernetes layer in between the infrastructure and the applications, but also what it really means. And I think the best description I heard was from one of our customers actually, who was talking to us on the booth, and they used that term, the cloud operating model, and they were talking a lot about how really inheriting, or perhaps that's the wrong word, sort of replicating some of the cloud-like experiences that you can have where you self-service or you program against APIs and you get immediate access to resources. Replicating that on-prem in their own data center using Kubernetes and other technologies was really, for them, almost a competitive advantage in that their developers were able to be more efficient and to move faster and to not be blocked by the availability of IT resources. Of course, Kubernetes is a catalyst for that, and Portworx was also an important part of that platform from a data management perspective. And I think, you know, all of that goodness around not only kind of clarifying people's roles in terms of responsibility, but also really being able to communicate the value of that cloud operating model in a business is summarized kind of holistically by this term, platform engineering. Vinny, just a sort of question for you on this topic. I mean, how would you describe how the role of platform engineering has evolved in the last year or two? And, you know, what trends do you think we're seeing as a result of this kind of shift towards this platform engineering mindset?
Yeah, a few years ago, it was an emerging trend, platform engineering. We were starting to use this term, to hear it a bit. And this year, we heard of platform everywhere. It was on booths, on talks, sessions. And I think it's because just before we talk about the maybe maturing of projects, of software tools. And I think that the challenge now for companies is, you know, how to assemble the puzzle pieces to kind of deliver the value to the customers. So I don't remember how many software now you have under the CNCF, but it's a huge number. And the issue for a customer is not to find the right tool. I think today we can find some tools for deployment, for integration, to help automate something, for deploying databases. But the real challenge is maybe to to come with something to deploy and manage at scale. As I said, it was like a puzzle or Lego. You know, you have some Legos everywhere. So now it's available. You can do great things. And maybe the most difficult or complex part is to use all these different pieces, all these different tools to build some outcome, some business outcome to companies, to your customers. And I've seen many companies promoting that, promoting their tooling, their new frameworks. Obviously, being more mature, we could think about cloud continuous integration, continuous deployment. We heard about Terraform, and maybe I've heard a lot about OpenTofu this year. And all these tools brought together to bring the outcome. So the outcome is not now how could I run my database on Kubernetes? We all know that's possible. We have many tools for that. But how could I deploy my application? And my application is composed of integration, deployment, database, streaming services, and so on. So that's why that's how I've seen this evolution regarding platform engineering. We are in the middle of platform engineering, and we can see the same with the workforce. So people need to be trained, to have knowledge on this tool, and to know how to assemble, how to use all the tools available together to create the outcome, the desired outcome.
Yeah, and that point about training, I think, is a really important one, because if you look at any of the kind of research, and I can't quote it in the slides here, but you look at a lot of the research on this, the skills gap is actually one of the biggest challenges still facing organizations. And the impact of not being able to deliver that kind of platform engineering team and mindset and approach to Kubernetes and your IT operations themselves can be pretty significant, right? I mean, I think this is quite an interesting little snippet from this Capital IQ report that came out a couple of years ago, that organizations that are adopting a sort of agile and resilient operating model, which I think we could quite easily link to that platform engineering mindset that Vinny was just describing, are able to recover from crises more rapidly than those who don't. And once again, that is so important for an organization that's operating in a competitive environment, which is basically every business on earth, right? And so of course, there are technological advantages, but this alone, I think, is compelling enough to really vindicate the importance and validate the importance of platform engineering, hence its prevalence at KubeCon, right? Any final thoughts on this, Vinny, before we move on?
Yeah, just as you said, the focus on the human part. People today are here to deliver and to offer something created. We have to imagine how to create the outcome based on the pieces we have on the market, in the ecosystem, and that the real challenge for the next year, how to scale, how to unify, I would say, how to unify different tools, different processes, different teams into something that we will be able to sell, to propose to our customer.
Yeah, absolutely. Okay, great. So let's move on. The second topic that was, well, hot is an understatement, right? Scorching at KubeCon was AI. And how could we talk about KubeCon and not mention AI? And I think there are, for me, before I pass over to you for your thoughts, Vinny, for me, there's a lot of talk around data sets being created, particularly from our perspective, of course, as a storage and data management company. There's a lot of talk about how to host the workloads. Should it be in the cloud? Then do we have to handle egress and ingress costs? There's lots of elements to this. But for me, the one that I think is particularly interesting and relevant for practitioners in this space, and this was a hot topic at our booth, along with other conversations that I had with analysts and customers at the event, is actually that AI is going to accelerate and also improve the quality of app development. And you might look at that and think, well, fine, we're going to produce more apps at higher quality, more rapidly. But what does that mean for the Kubernetes space? Well, I think it's beyond doubt that the default deployment mechanism for workloads is now a container, right? That's how any new applications are built, packaged, and delivered into containers. So inevitably, as a technologist responsible for a Kubernetes platform, you can expect to feel a greater demand to host an increasingly well, rapidly growing set of applications. And so inevitably that leads to challenges around scale and resilience and the quality of the platform. Is it production grade? Does it have all those monitoring and management capabilities that we require to host this new raft of workloads coming onto the platform? And I think that concern, whilst it's not currently a sort of acute pain, I do think that a lot of the kind of forward-looking platform teams that we spoke to they see it on the horizon, it's coming, and they sense this. Vinny, I mean, firstly, it'd be great to get your thoughts on that, but also it would be good to get sort of your observations on this point, on how organizations are leveraging AI to drive their application modernization strategies.
Obviously, AI was, I think, at the center of all conversation, all discussions, from the starting general session to a ton of lightning talks. Everyone has heard about AI during the KubeCon. That's pretty clear. I think we've seen two sides regarding AI this year. The first one was around, management. We've talked about the shortage of skill, the need for people to manage Kubernetes. And obviously, cluster management is really important and relevant for all the people that attended KubeCon. AI, we could think about suggesting upgrades, improving, easing operation, obviously the security. I've even heard about a Chaos Monkey feature that was discussed, allowing users to test, to simulate outage within their cluster. So really the shift towards multi-cluster management, one of the challenge was shortage of skill, people, knowledge, and AI will obviously have a very important, if not to say a major role in that, to automate things, because all people started with like a few nodes, one Kubernetes cluster, one application, and soon it becomes more and more complex. So AI will play a major and significant role in there to help people manage, run, secure their cluster. And if I may, Joe, a second thanks. The second part is the application. So AI on apps, obviously, if we are running our apps on Kubernetes, we will run our databases. And so we want to run our AI machine learning apps on Kubernetes. It's always been complex because even on VMs with virtualization, AI likes GPUs, processes. And with the latest announcement, I don't know if you heard that, Joe, but with Intel, with Red Hat, for example, with OpenShift Data Science, ODS, many processes will be optimized for CPUs, for example. So the technology is improving, and obviously the target is to provide a platform and architecture to run AI apps on top of Kubernetes and to simplify the bits needed to run this, like the example I've just quoted on CPU versus GPU. So for me, that was the two sides on the AI conversations.
Yeah, and thank you for covering that. I focused on the app development piece, but I think your points around, yeah, sort of the platform components that are required to be successful with the technology are really relevant and probably play into maybe some of that anxiety that some of the platform teams were talking about at the event around, well, we think there's this wave of additional demand coming into our realm of responsibility, and we're looking for some guidance on how to handle that. Um, and yeah, to your point about complexity, I mean, I think there's this, just to kind of support that, there's this great bit of information from McKinsey, who were talking about exactly that point around, yeah, how Gen AI positively impacts that consistency within engineering teams when it comes to them dealing with highly complex tasks. And you were talking about the platform piece specifically, but it's still relevant, right? Because it's still addressing, well, it's a new way of handling complexity within the complex systems that we build and manage. Okay, so let's move on to our last point then. And this for me, this was the hottest topic of the whole week, right? It was a lot of people talking about ourselves, not just our customers, but asking questions about virtualization and changes in the virtualization market. And it was a really broad set of questions. Some saying, well, we want to look at this as a catalyst for us. We want to look at new options. Others saying, it's fine, there's no concerns. We've got great relationships and we're happy to continue. So it was a real broad range of views on this. But I do think, as someone, we've both been kind of in the virtualization world as well as the cloud native world for quite a long time. For me, the one thing that I do think is true is that we will see this kind of change in the market as a catalyst for modernization. And I had an interesting conversation with an analyst actually, where he was talking about sort of the death of the digital transformation narrative, and actually now it's more about modernization. And actually, I kind of took a moment to reflect on that, and also felt a lot of sympathy for all the marketing teams out there who've been talking about digital transformation for the last few years. But in all seriousness, I think he's right. Digital transformation is very much focused on the experiences of users, whether internal or external, right? It's all about how do we build new digital native, I guess, experiences like mobile banking applications, like streaming services, all of these kind of modern experiences. But I think that actually what's happening now is that organizations are looking at how they can modernize not only their IT environments, but also their organization as a whole. And a whole load of things kind of trickle down from that holistic theme, which are things like sustainability, right? I mean, if you can modernize how you're operating your server and storage infrastructure, you can naturally improve your ESG credentials and reduce your rack space requirements, and therefore your energy and your cooling requirements. So that kind of plays into the modernization piece, right? Same with modernizing applications and re-architecting them to be more scalable and to be more portable, so you can start to leverage commercial elements of other agreements with vendors, as well as ensure that you're still delivering a great experience to the users and the customers of that service. And I think this kind of falls within that category, in that the change will probably accelerate some of those themes. And of course, bringing it back to KubeCon, we see not only the maturing KubeVirt project, and to be honest, KubeVirt's been around for quite a long time actually as a project, and it already is great. It's a great product. There's some complexity there, but it's already viable. But what I think has changed is that we see the enterprise support for KubeVirt and virtualization in Kubernetes in the form of Rancher and Red Hat and others. And I think for me, that's the thing that's particularly interesting, is that that's now being presented as a viable alternative to customers looking at this. And of course, from our perspective, we were getting a whole load of questions around, well, how does data management work? And we're in a great position to be able to provide a data fabric to containerized as well as virtual workloads in Kubernetes. But of course, that feels like a big change. So it's a really interesting topic. Vinny, I've just spoken a lot, but what are your thoughts on this?
I always let you speak first, Joe, obviously. But definitely you were talking about accelerating a trend. And yes, same as you, both talks, conversation, every discussion we've had with prospect customers, we had a part on, and what do you think about a VMware? Maybe not exit. That's not really possible, but maybe a rebalance of our project, not to put everything on the VMware stack. And as Kubernetes is getting stronger year over year inside our organization, what could we do to rebalance that? Because I think for me, that's a change of the paradigm. Before we had the virtualization, and when Kubernetes gained adoption and traction, we've started to host the worker nodes on top of VMs. And now, we see that a lot of people are taking back the bare metal, the physical servers, and directly install on top of the bare metal server their operating system and act as a worker node without the virtualization layer. And obviously, the Broadcom acquisition maybe started the process inside companies to think about a rebalance of their strategy, not to put everything into VMware VMs, but why not rediscover the power of bare metal servers? And if I broaden the subject, Joe, and I would love to have your input on that, we could think also on the edge computing, and it's becoming increasingly important. I won't go through all the train, autonomous cars, 5G antennas, factories, and so on, but we see that it's gaining a rapid adoption across industries. It's strategic, and obviously having some containers inside the 5G antennas is easier than deploying VMs. And all these trends, we've heard about dedicated distro like K0S or KubeEdge, which is a CNCF project. So being able to deploy Kubernetes on a single node, for example, rethinking about the virtualization strategy. And you talk about KubeVirt, which obviously can make us think about why not have an architecture where the standard would be containers, Kubernetes. And if we need to keep some legacy VMs, why not host these VMs using KubeVirt, for example? So yeah, definitely very important subject to cover for us.
Yeah, and I think your point about edge is really a good one, because that was also, well, it's been a common theme at KubeCon for a number of years, actually. But I think if we take a step back and maybe summarize this topic, I think really the best way to look at it is that flexibility in the infrastructure, which is an inherent part of the design of Kubernetes itself, whether it's containers or virtual machines, has a huge impact on the operational effectiveness of an organization. I mean, it's that simple, right? If you have flexibility to run your workloads on-prem, in the cloud, in hybrid models, in multi-cloud models, without the complexity that comes with that, with some of the traditional ways of running workloads, like that you were just talking about, you have greater job satisfaction, you have more effective team members, but equally, you have improved organizational performance because you can leverage the benefits of the environments that you're running in, and that has a tangible impact on a business. And I think, whilst this might not be front of mind for the people tasked, in this ecosystem with maybe bringing virtual workloads across or moving out of server infrastructure entirely into container-based environments, I do think it's important for us as a community to keep in mind some of the reasons behind this, right? Because I think we often overlook that. And for me, this is actually kind of the exciting bit, because frankly, KubeCon's all about people. And if we can make people's lives managing this stuff better in some way, then that's actually the most important thing of all, right? Any final comments on this, Vinny?
Totally agree with flexibility. We could add also sustainability, Joe, because obviously edge computing or low resource footprint, that will become more and more important. It's already very important. So definitely that's a strong wave coming, and all the things we've talked about, flexibility, sustainability, being able to improve the way we are operating the projects, the workloads, that's very important.
Absolutely. All right, so that brings us to maybe the most important part of the webinar. So firstly, big thank you for attending today. You know, the three topics we talked about were, you know, modern virtualization, which is obviously the last topic, AI, and then also the establishment of platform engineering. So Vinny, many thanks for your thoughts on those topics. Also, a massive thank you to all of our customers, partners, and anyone actually who came up to our booth or joined any of the events, our dinner, our workshop. Throughout the week. It was an absolutely fantastic week with loads of inspiring and informative talks. Vinny, thank you as well for looking after us in Paris. You know, it was very helpful having you as our tour guide. And of course, I can now return that favor, because next year, KubeCon is going to be in London, which is very exciting. And I'll be able to recommend some great restaurants and bars over the course of the week for you, and obviously
Yeah, looking forward to seeing that, Joe.
Yes, indeed. So thank you very much for joining the webinar. What we will do now is just to bring things to a close, is open up for any questions from the audience.